Legacy of a King, a Legacy series novel by Charlene Sponsel. Chapter 3, An Unwanted Guest. 41st day of fall, 4:46. By the time I woke, daylight winked through the shutters. I opened my eyes to callous stone walls and pushed open the cracked wood. Misty morning air rushed in with its bite of crisp cold. I leaned out to see the mountains that greeted me each morning, a jagged shadow on the horizon, the pink blush of dawn crushed by a blinding amber orb. It wasn't late. Sunrise was earlier because the shadow of the mountain didn't fall that far. A tray of food sat on the table. The tea warmed my fingers and steam rolled up my face, leaving the fragrance of citrus in its wake. I imagined myself at home, but shrill shouts of spring chicks begging for their breakfast pervaded my fantasy. An Ever Forester ensemble had replaced the clothes I made and the silk cape. I pulled on the drab jade tunic of stiff linen, the scratchy wool pants and stockings, rather than the lilac gown which hung on the back of the door. By midday the room was stifling, and I paced it, gritting my teeth harder with every turn. Finally, the door opened, and the generous backside of a girl with a tray pushed through it. "Hello, miss. Weren't you hungry?" she asked, eyeing my uneaten breakfast. "No, I wasn't. Has my father come back? Has the king or Elderman mentioned me?" "I don't know, miss." The Vinland girl's olive skin was light, like she didn't get out much. Copious bright plums shaded her hairline, jaw, and cheekbones. She pushed lank black hair streaked with matching highlights behind her back. "The king hasn't left his quarters since the queen died, save yesterday. I avoid the Elderman, but I've not had to this morning. Why haven't you asked anyone yourself?" "The door was locked," I said, failing to hide my annoyance. "It's a heavy door, and the latch sticks." "Who put you here?" Her lips puckered, emphasizing her question. "The Elderman." "Oh. Well, it's not locked anymore, and Princess Belia's quarters are the first on the left. Prince Willick's nursery is by her drawing room, thank thou father, or I would get precious little sleep." "These are your quarters?" She nodded. "I hope you weren't cold. The princess keeps the fire burning late for me, but since I wasn't staying here, she didn't." "Where are you staying?" "We're stretched thin. Many entitled stayed over for the interment. I am the princess's handmaid, but she is making do with the nanny, and I am staying in Duchess Sibika's quarters. She makes the princess look like a dearie." "Is the princess difficult?" "She's a princess, a mite worse than entitled, but a lot better than the duchess." "Whose quarters are on the right?" "Kamek's." Her eyes narrowed. "Why do you ask?" I shrugged. He was the last person I would ask for help. The girl completed her duties, took the breakfast tray with her, and left the door ajar. I considered finding someone to answer my questions, but, remembering the Elderman's order to stay, I closed it. The paintwood trees blowing in the afternoon breeze were spindles compared with the Westfall's wide caracats, but tribes lived in them. I imagined running along the rope bridges that connected their houses high in the canopies. When I went back to my food, it was cold. I nibbled at a roll and drank the water. I wasn't hungry anyway. The day passed with only another tray of food arriving with apologies for the late hour. The salty broth calmed my stomach, and I forsook the rest. How am I so tired when I've done nothing but wait? The handmaid shook me awake the following morning. "Your father is here, miss." "Lili?" my father said from the doorway. "Papa!" I crawled to the end of the bed and hung on him, tears of joy filling my eyes. "Is this your room?" I gestured to the handmaid. "It's hers." He sat and took out a paper, my unification contract. The king's crest was at the bottom, next to the date. The day before the interment? I hadn't arrived yet. Much of it I didn't comprehend, but the promised price was our family's land that was lost during the Elderman's War. I gave him a questioning glance. I wasn't worth that much, and we would have settled for less. The thought made me feel like chattel. "They'll pay in advance. You'll be the queen, Lili, and your brother can find a mate. I wish your mother were here to see it. I brought your trunks." King Tali is ready to receive you now, Elderman Sittac said, interrupting our reunion. I haven't dressed. Be attentive to the king, my father hushed me while the elderman glowered at us. I will, father. We'll see each other soon. Tears streamed down my cheeks as he left. It might as well be forever. The elderman's jaw was cut in a permanent, impatient scowl. Enough. You are your father's child no longer. Do you know what it means to be promised to a king? I wiped my cheeks with the back of my hand. That we will unite when I reach maturity? It's more than a promised unification. It's a promise of faithfulness, fidelity, and fealty. I had a vague idea of what the words meant, but never having needed to apply them, they signified little. Prepare her, he barked at the handmaid before leaving us. Would you like the gown, miss? No. Yesterday's clothes would be better if you have no others. Are you sure? Elderman Sittac requested it. It's the king's favorite color. With an assertiveness I didn't possess but fit the part, I said, I'm certain. Even if it were, it would remind him of the queen. But the gown is my responsibility, I said, lifting the uncomfortable forester ensemble from where I left it. I cringed as I donned the rough fabrics and sat in front of the mirror. Red-rimmed, oversized eyes stared back at me. I don't know what to say, she said as she drew my thin hair into a fancy knot with short hairs left out to frame my face. I'd no idea I was waiting on the future queen. The princess is also the future queen, I suppose, but... Thank you, I said, ending the girl's nervous blustering, for her claim of being speechless didn't stop her chattering. Follow me, the elderman ordered as I crossed the threshold. Your room adjoins the king's, and you will be tutored with his children. As a representative of the sovereignty, you will not address any soldier except your personal guard and Farin. You will not leave the grounds without your guard and permission of the king. You will dress to your station and to please the king. On that note, your attire was a wise choice. I smoothed my hands over the linen and asked, was it a test? Regretting my rash decision to do so. The first of many, and not all will be of my machinations. The servants fear you. Good, he barked, and turned his back, undoing the civilizing effect his sympathetic comment had wrought. I appreciate your candidness, but be careful, or you will find out why. I pushed down my panic and opened the door. Why couldn't I keep my mouth shut? Why did I say everything the moment it occurred to me? King Tali? I kneeled and sunk into the plush emerald carpet as the heavy door thumped behind me. The room couldn't have been more different from his brother's. Furniture of light paintwood gave it a welcoming ambiance, despite the dim light coming from the smoldering fire. Laurel pillows softened the stiff white leather benches, and on the end tables beside them were slender vases, unmistakably feminine touches. The evidence of flowers they once held, a reminder she wasn't there to replace them. You need not kneel. The king's mouth remained a straight line as he spoke, his eyes hidden by heavy lids. The highlights in his close-cropped mahogany hair were dull, as was the shading of his contours. He didn't resemble the picture of him in my mind, as he viewed a painting above the mantel from a chair that faced it. It was a portrait of Queen Varin, younger than any I had seen, yet her hair shined with dark highlights and violet shaded her olive complexion. How old was she? Her father painted it, so she must have been about your age. We met later that cycle, after he died. I placed my hand on his to comfort him, but he pulled away and studied me. You have been crying. My cheeks burned. I don't mean to be ungrateful. I am sorry Sittac brought you into this plan of his. He said I need a companion. I did not expect he would find me a child. Brothers, he huffed. Still, I suppose he is not wrong. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. I stiffened, attempting to control my emotions. I cannot replace her. She was the kindest, most perfect person I ever met, I said, playing with the hem of my tunic. He squinted, searching my face. You are the West Forrester girl. The one Varin... His voice cracked. I am, sire. He didn't realize the Queen sent for me. She had kept it from him. This was her favorite. He lifted his half-empty glass of wine and downed it with one gulp. I never much cared for it, but now it is my companion. The king didn't want me there. How would my father endure having his land ripped away again? I'll try not to disappoint you, I said, desperate to salvage the meeting. He shifted away from me. You may go. I pushed through heavy doors, eyes clouded, and ran into a man clad in a forest green uniform. Despite the Elderman's order not to speak to them, I said, I'm sorry. I wiped my eyes and looked up at him, making my neck hurt. Miss, I am the head of your personal guard. His light-colored hair was too short to make out highlights, and judging by the darkened shade of his skin, he spent plenty of time outdoors, which I would expect if he were a clansman. His shading wasn't a true green, but I wasn't about to ask about his race. I gaped at him, puzzled. All I remembered about coastal clans was they were polite, so I bowed my head in greeting. Your quarters are through here. He led me to a set of open double doors to the left of the king's drawing room. Good day, miss. I am Zuri, your Ajin, said a man inside the chamber. What's an Ajin? He wasn't a child, but he lacked the markings of an adult, and disheveled blonde hair like you would expect to see on a young boy covered his head. He ignored my question. This is your drawing room, where you may entertain visitors. The quarters were larger than our entire cottage. Across the drawing room were chambers decorated in West Forrester fashion. Comfortable maroon chairs faced an enormous fireplace. The room radiated the beauty of home, but the things were meaningless. They had no history, not having belonged to the people I trusted, which was certainly no one in Alonji. Light from balcony doors filled a circular solar. I want to be alone. Beelining for the balcony, I passed the vanity and an armoire made of a rich, reddish wood. Probably cost more than I did. Pained by the comparison, I leaned against the balustrade, longing for the familiarity of home. A breeze cooled my wet eyelids. I hadn't a cloak, but I didn't care. Tiny boats paddled around Elon Lake. I imagined myself in one of them, trailing my fingers through the water while my father fished, and Elix complained I was scaring them away.